We work on studies for mostly prevention of chronic disease.
I worked primarily in geriatric oncology.
Some of the participants that I do come in contact with, they're either on chemo or they're currently going through cancer treatment.
Now I work on a study working with Alzheimer's research.
Been involved in a really broad variety of research studies.
I have worked with both adults and pediatric children, and I really have enjoyed doing the job that I do.
I have been at Washington University School of Medicine for a little over 11 years.
I've been working in the Division of Public Health Sciences for about 5.5, maybe 6 years.
I have been a research coordinator for 19 years.
I've been a research coordinator for 16 years.
I've been a research coordinator here at Washington University for about 14 and a half years. It's one of those things I always tell people, it's kind of like being a teacher. You do it because you're passionate about it.
I think I'm on a list that said, call her, she'll say yes.
I've participated in well over 100 studies. I think it was 31 last year.
I've probably participated in about 30 studies.
I've been participating for 15 plus years in over 200 studies.
I've participated in these studies both directly and indirectly with my mom and my son, and then directly with myself with the opioid study, as well as a study on health and meditation.
I've participated in probably about a dozen studies here at WashU. The majority of them have been one-study visits.
I've participated in a bunch of different studies, and it's really been a fantastic experience.
I've done mainly healthy volunteer studies.
I participate in a women's health study.
I've done that one study on mindfulness.
I have done studies from blood draws to hearing tests to MRIs to cognition studies in the elderly, smoking cessation, exercises, it covers the gamut.
Customer service is like the number one with being a coordinator.
You want to know that they're there to help you and they really enjoy what they're doing.
All the coordinators I've worked with have just been very approachable and friendly, happy to answer any questions.
It was a good experience for me.
There have been some negative experiences. I've had some people that barely talk to you while you're there, or they're very short. Not rude, but you can just tell they're there to do their job and just to get out as quickly as possible.
Some coordinators you can tell is new. They haven't been doing it for a while.
The very first one that I did at WashU was an MRI study. Person was particularly, I could tell that he was a little annoyed with people lately doing the study because he's had somebody in the last week every other day would freak out about the MRI scan, that they didn't know what it was, and so they'd get in there and they'd freak out and they'd press the escape button. And so he was kind of short-tempered with me during the consent.
A coordinator's job is so special because we're the ones they see every day. We're the reason why we can either make it or break it that they come back to the university for anything.
Participants will have an outstanding experience when they feel that they've been seen as a person and respected.
I think just good, customer service. I know that sounds weird, but, we're all people, and just making sure that we know what's going on and treating us like they'd want to be treated.
Lots of smiles.
It's something about a smile. A smile begets a smile.
I try to always be happy, never a Debbie Downer, so to speak. I never point out negative things.
We put on our Sunday manners.
Be compassionate.
Being honest with the person.
If you, in fact, know it's a question that would make you uncomfortable, tell the person across the table from you.
You have to have understanding. You have to have empathy. You have to have patience.
The one thing I found was that the researcher was just like talking to somebody you've known for a long time.
They welcome me in like I've been knowing them forever.
The more that we see people having more positive interactions with research, then more people will be able to and be more willing to participate.
During the screening, I like to let them know why I'm coming to them. So we have a lot of open-ended conversations. I discuss, how I identified them, why I'm approaching them for this study, and why I think they would be a good fit for this study.
We encourage the participant to bring a family member or a friend.
I think it's important to give them all the information, a week ahead of time.
She would tell me everything that's going to go on and try to walk me through it before I even went to it.
That way, if there are travel complications, if they have issues with directions, that gives you time to send them the information. Especially with the geriatric population, sometimes email isn't most feasible, so they want to receive that in the mail. So giving them time to get it in the mail and review it and then ask questions is really helpful.
They would explain, how long it would take. Then they also explained, where the parking was, if I had trouble as far as the times concerns were. They offered up a slot and then would say, hey, are you okay at this time? They would tell me that they would give a follow-up via an email, in which they did.
We do send a map out as well with detailed instructions on how to get to the parking garage, how to get from the parking garage across the walkway to the hospital where we'll meet them.
Making sure that they're not getting lost is a really good way to help make sure that our participants are comfortable with us.
I think the coordinators do the best where they explain the directions over the phone, and then they also send out a follow-up email. For me, it's really helpful whenever they send a copy of like a map through an email. We
have accounts with the cab companies that we have very good luck with. To bring them here, we offer that to anybody that is unsure about driving here and finding where to park. And we always meet those people right at the cab when they're dropped off.
If you cannot greet them in person, and make sure that there are signs up so that when they enter the doorway, they can find their way.
The parking over here can be very stressful, so I try to make sure that I can make them as comfortable as possible.
Sometimes participants find it hard to come on to a campus that they may not necessarily trust.
My perspective is always to come into an interaction with a participant with empathy and try to see where they're coming from.
Be compassionate, be caring, because if that was you on the other receiving end, you would absolutely want someone that's nice and warm.
We always offer coffee, water, make sure they know where the bathrooms are, make sure that the room is comfortable, make sure that I've sort of made some small talk.
Children enjoy incentives, so I might bring candy and toys and coloring books or anything to get them engaged, to get to know me, to really build a relationship with them.
The most important thing is to explain the important elements of consent in a way that is accessible. The consent form is written the way it is for a reason, but even I have trouble understanding the language in it. It's not something that someone coming in is going to, especially if they've never been involved in research, is going to be able to understand what we're trying to say unless we can explain it to them in a way that's a little more down to earth, a little bit more practical.
I actually go through it with them, read it with them, talk with them, and then I go back and make sure they understand, as well as have them to ask me questions. Sometimes I might even say, so are you sure you're able to do whatever? And then they'll laugh and we can go from there. Because some people tend to hesitate sometimes, but they do not speak up. And I try to look out for that so I can bring them forward, because I do not want the hesitations. I want them to be comfortable doing whatever it is that we need to do for that particular study.
Right away, I feel the most comfortable with a study if I can tell that the person's going to explain and understand what I'm getting, what I'm grasping, and what I'm not.
She would go through it with you and give you examples.
While we are sitting with a participant, I make sure that they have a copy and I have a copy. And I am big with a highlighter and highlighting things, underlining things, starring things that may be extra important for them, not only to understand now, but to remember in the future.
A lot of our participants are older. A lot of them are slightly cognitively impaired. Some of them a little bit more so than others, which takes a little bit more patience, a little bit more explaining, going over things repeatedly just to make sure they understand.
I use a lot of open-ended questions where I have them reiterate back to me what they're being asked to do. I leave lots of time for questions.
I think they pick up on it if you're trying to rush through the process, and that makes them feel as if they don't have the power to stop or don't have the power to tell you that they have a concern.
With the geriatric population, one consideration to always remember, especially during the informed consent process, is being able to use louder volume for these patients that may have issues with pitch.
They're very precise when they talk. They engage me as to, does this make sense to you? Do you understand this? And they want to make sure I'm comfortable with every decision that I make on down the line. They want to make sure I realize my information is going to be protected, that I am an anonymous participant, that I can withdraw at any moment. And it is very systematic, and where I need to initial, where I need to sign, copy for your records, copy for my records. Are you ready to move forward?
Have a little bit of awkward silence and let them think a minute, because that is a lot of information to digest.
We want them to be able to think through it. We like to have our conversations where we have time to build in pauses. That way, if they want to interject or have some questions, or maybe their caregivers have some questions, we have ample time for that.
A focus on health literacy is the most important thing that you can do. If you're putting together a study, you need to be able to explain it as if you were enrolling a 10 to 12-year-old person. If you can explain it to somebody like that, then you can explain it to anybody, and assuming that anybody, regardless of how they dress, how they look, or how old they are, assuming they know anything that you had to go to school to learn is a mistake.
We use a supplemental sheet that puts everything that is in the consent in very plain language form.
It was very helpful to me, because when I say I couldn't understand most of the words she was explaining to me, and I was looking and she looked at me, I had a look on my face and she knew I didn't understand majority of the stuff she was talking about.
We find it really hard for a lot of patients to understand that language that's there on the consent.
Everyone reads on a 4th to 6th grade reading level, the general public. So there's something called the Flesh reading system that you can use in Word that will simplify things and keep the counts down. And that's how I learned to keep things simple with how I speak to them, whether they're educated or not.
That what made me feel comfortable, and I understood everything that was going on with the paper she gave me.
The consent form could be a lot to go through, and just making sure to go through that thoroughly and making sure, even though they read that paper, I always ask at every single point, multiple times, what questions do you have? Is it okay for me to move forward? Do you understand what is currently going on? And just making sure that they're all on the same page with you.
I know that our study is not easy. It's a full day of their effort. It's 4.5 hours of time in a scanner.
Make sure you communicate with them often. See if they need anything, if they're cold, if they're warm. Those little things that they know that you're paying attention to them and their needs kind of takes away, takes their mind off of, I'm laying here on the scanner table for 3 hours.
They could have said, oh, we're going to go ahead and push them through it, but they kept asking me, how do you feel? Let us know. It's easy right now. Let us know when it gets a little bit harder.
Getting an IV placed, getting your blood sugar dropped down low, it can be uncomfortable, but as long as people are communicative, it makes it better.
Mostly it's just they were just so kind and considerate and accommodating.
Once the study's done, we make sure they get out okay. We don't just say, there's the elevator, you can find your way out. We make sure we walk them out and make sure they get on their way, everything's fine with them, thank them again, and reiterate that we are working together. They are part of our team, and how much we appreciate that they came in and volunteered their time. Just hoping that they walk away with that message.
Folk like to feel that they're actually being useful. Is that a kind way to say it? What's the purpose?
Not everybody thanks their participants for coming out, even if they don't enroll. They're taking out time of their day, time that they probably aren't getting paid for, to help you and to help the research that you're doing.
So after their participation ends, I just let them know how valued they are and how much we appreciate them taking extra time out of their treatment to participate in our study. And I think it makes them feel like they're part of something big.
Or even if it's a text or email, to check and say, I would like to check on you, see how you're doing. You have any complication? Did you have any questions or concerns or anything you'd like to tell us about the study?
A lot of our studies are longitudinal. We ask them to come back sometimes 2.5 to 3 years later. Even in the studies where we don't want them to come back for a second visit, we still follow up with birthday cards now. We send thank you cards.
New coordinators don't understand how important that is to get IRB approval to send out birthday cards, especially if you're doing longitudinal, because people don't send birthday cards anymore.
If I got a birthday card from a research study, I would love it. I'm real big on birthdays, and that would make me feel really special.
It's those little things that really make a difference on retaining and engaging them.
One thing research teams could do better would be offering some follow-up down the road, just letting us know the outcome of the study that we participated in and what knowledge has been gained from our participation.
Yeah, honestly, there's really been no follow-up in my opinion. I mean, you're told this study's going to have this amount of visits. And once you've completed that and all the tasks involved, you know you're done and that's it.
We do a one-page summary form that we usually send to either via email or we will send that to them in the mail to the patients to kind of let them know the results of the study, because a lot of times people will participate in research, but they don't know where to go and find the information as a result of the study. So we kind of put it on ourselves to be able to follow up with the patient so they can kind of know that what they did count and it did matter and it did help us in this way, and here's what we found.
We always try to present the information in a way that is accessible at a reasonably low reading level, and using graphics or images that that allow the information to be pulled out in a pretty straightforward way.
All the studies I've participated in have been a really great experience.
I've actually had many patients tell me, I enjoyed being on the study because every time I came here, I knew I would get to talk to you and we'd get to have fun conversations.
Today, I had this participant. I haven't seen this woman it's been at least 6 years. Out of the blue today, she calls me and tells me, I was thinking about you. I just wanted to talk to you. Do you have any study I can come in and participate to help you? And I was thinking, wow, I didn't know I mean that much to that woman, but she reached out to me.
To be honest with you, from a background of being in customer service, I don't think there's anything that they can do better except to continue whatever model or whatever mantra that they're doing now with the people that they have, people who love their job, people who smile at you.
It was wonderful, and I enjoyed it.
If it's an hour out of my day to go do something fun and interesting to help advance science, why wouldn't you do that?
Every new study has its own quirks and things that need to be worked out to make the study run smoothly. But ultimately, the goal is to generate knowledge that's valuable to the community and moving research forward, which is a fun goal to have every day.
I thoroughly expect to read in the newspaper or online or something fabulous, and I can say, I was part of that. Or some PhD student, I'm going to read their names and go, I helped you. So that's what I'm looking for in the end.